Think about your earliest memory. Close your eyes if you need to. Picture it. Maybe you are 3 years old, sitting in your grandmother's kitchen. You can smell the bread. You can see the pattern on the tablecloth. You remember her voice, the exact words she said, the sunlight coming through the window. That memory feels solid, real, yours. Now here's the problem. There is a very good chance that memory never happened. Not the way you think it did, not even close. Your brain is not a video recorder. It does not store the past like files on a hard drive. It is an editor, a storyteller, a liar. Every time you remember something, your brain rebuilds that memory from fragments, fills in the gaps with guesses, borrows details from photographs, from stories other people told you, from movies you watched years later, and then it saves that new version over the old one. You are not remembering your childhood. You are remembering the last time you remembered it, and each time it gets a little more wrong. This is not a theory. This is not philosophy. This is neuroscience. And by the end of this story, you will question every memory you have ever trusted. Because if your brain can lie to you about the most important moments of your life, then who are you, and what is real? A man sits across from a researcher and tells a story he has told 100 times before. He is 38 years old now, but he is talking about something that happened when he was 2. He remembers the day his parents brought him home from the hospital after his baby sister was born. He remembers standing in the doorway of the house, holding his father's hand. He remembers his mother carrying a pink blanket. He remembers the smell of rain, the sound of the door opening, the way the hallway looked dark compared to the bright afternoon outside. He has told this story at family dinners. He has written about it in therapy. It is his earliest memory, the foundation of his sense of self. The researcher asks him a simple question. How old were you? He answers confidently. 2 years old, maybe 2.5. The researcher writes that down, then pulls out a birth certificate, hospital records, and a timeline his mother provided. According to the documents, he was 18 months old when his sister was born, and he was not at the house that day. He was at his grandmother's house 2 hours away, being watched by his aunt. His father picked him up 3 days later. There is no way he could have seen what he just described. The man stares at the documents. He does not believe it at first. The memory is too vivid. He can still see the pink blanket. He can still feel his father's hand. But the records do not lie. The researcher explains what happened. For years, his parents told the story of bringing the baby home. They showed him photographs of the house, of his mother holding the blanket, of the front door. His brain took those images, those repeated stories, and built a first-person experience around them. It inserted him into a scene he was never part of. And because he was so young when the story started being told, his brain filed it under personal memory instead of thing I was told. Now, decades later, he cannot tell the difference. The memory feels real because his brain made it real, but it is not. It never was. He asks the researcher, if that memory is fake, what else is fake? The researcher does not answer, because the answer is too uncomfortable. Almost everything before the age of 4 is either gone or reconstructed, and a lot of what comes after is contaminated. Your brain does not care about truth. It cares about making a coherent story. And if that means inventing scenes, borrowing details from other people's lives, or turning a photograph into a lived experience, your brain will do it without asking permission. You will never know the difference until someone shows you the evidence, and by then, it is too late. The fake memory has been real to you for so long that losing it feels like losing part of yourself. A woman in her 40s goes to therapy for anxiety. During one session, she mentions a memory that has haunted her since childhood. She was 5 years old. Her parents were fighting in the kitchen. She remembers standing in the doorway in her pajamas, crying, watching her father throw a plate against the wall. She remembers her mother screaming a specific phrase, "You are destroying this family." She remembers the sound of the plate shattering, the way her father turned and saw her standing there, the look of shame on his face. That memory, she says, is the moment she learned that love is violent. It shaped every relationship she has had since. The therapist asks her to describe the scene in more detail. What color were the pajamas? What time of day was it? Where exactly was she standing? The woman answers every question with confidence. Pink pajamas with white stars. Late evening, maybe 9 or 10 at night. She was standing just inside the kitchen doorway, right next to the refrigerator. The therapist writes it all down. Then she asks, have you ever talked about this memory with your parents? The woman says yes, many times. In fact, her mother has told the story of that fight dozens of times over the years. It's one of the defining moments of their family history. The plate, the scream, the shame. Her mother tells it at family gatherings, during arguments, during moments of reflection. The woman has heard the story so many times she could recite it word for word. The therapist asks one more question. In your mother's version of the story, where were you? The woman pauses. She tries to remember. Her mother always said she was upstairs, asleep. She did not see the fight. She was not in the kitchen. The fight happened, the plate broke, the words were said, but the woman was not there.
The therapist suggests calling the mother to confirm. They do. The mother is certain. Her daughter was asleep upstairs. She checked on her after the fight. She was still asleep. She did not wake up until the next morning. The woman feels something crack inside her chest. For 40 years, she has carried this memory. She has built her identity around it. The scared little girl in pink pajamas. The witness to her parents' collapse. Except she was not a witness. She was asleep. The memory she has is not hers. It is her mother's. Her brain heard the story over and over, year after year. It heard the details, the emotions, the dialogue. And somewhere along the way, it stopped being a story her mother told and became a memory she lived. Her brain inserted her into the scene, gave her a point of view, added sensory details, pajamas, refrigerator, doorway, and saved it as a first-person experience. Now she cannot unsee it. Even knowing the truth, the image remains. Because memory does not care about facts, it cares about narrative. And her brain built a narrative that explained her fear, her anxiety, her mistrust. None of it was real, but all of it shaped her life. A woman in her 40s goes to therapy for anxiety. During one session, she mentions a memory that has haunted her since childhood. She was 5 years old. Her parents were fighting in the kitchen. She remembers standing in the doorway in her pajamas, crying, watching her father throw a plate against the wall. She remembers her mother screaming a specific phrase, "You are destroying this family." She remembers the sound of the plate shattering, the way her father turned and saw her standing there, the look of shame on his face. That memory, she says, is the moment she learned that love is violent. It shaped every relationship she has had since. The therapist asks her to describe the scene in more detail. What color were the pajamas? What time of day was it? Where exactly was she standing? The woman answers every question with confidence. Pink pajamas with white stars. Late evening, maybe 9 or 10 at night. She was standing just inside the kitchen doorway, right next to the refrigerator. The therapist writes it all down. Then she asks, "Have you ever talked about this memory with your parents?" The woman pauses. She tries to remember. Her mother always said she was upstairs, asleep. She did not see the fight. She was not in the kitchen. The fight happened, the plate broke, the words were said, but the woman was not there. The therapist suggests calling the mother to confirm. They do. The mother is certain. Her daughter was asleep upstairs. She checked on her after the fight. She was still asleep. She did not wake up until the next morning. The woman feels something crack inside her chest. For 40 years, she has carried this memory. She has built her identity around it. The scared little girl in pink pajamas. The witness to her parents' collapse. Except she was not a witness. She was asleep. The memory she has is not hers. It is her mother's. Her brain heard the story over and over, year after year. It heard the details, the emotions, the dialogue. And somewhere along the way, it stopped being a story her mother told and became a memory she lived. Her brain inserted her into the scene, gave her a point of view, added sensory details, pajamas, refrigerator, doorway, and saved it as a first-person experience. Now she cannot unsee it. Even knowing the truth, the image remains. Because memory does not care about fact, it cares about narrative. And her brain built a narrative that explained her fear, her anxiety, her mistrust. None of it was real, but all of it shaped her life.
She asked the therapist, "If that is not real, then what is?" The therapist does not have a good answer, because the feelings are real. The anxiety is real. The pain is real. But the origin story she built around those feelings is fiction. Her brain needed a reason for the fear, so it borrowed a memory from someone else's life and made it hers. The scar is real. The wound that caused it never existed. A week later, she goes through old family photo albums. She finds pictures from that year. In one of them, she is wearing pink pajamas with white stars. She was 5 years old. The pajamas existed, but she was not in the kitchen that night. Her brain saw the photo, heard the story, and stitched them together into a scene that never happened. She closes the album and realizes something worse than the lie. Even now, knowing the truth, she can still see herself standing in that doorway. The memory refuses to disappear. Because once your brain builds a memory, it does not matter if the memory is true. It only matters that it feels true, and feelings do not care about facts. She starts questioning everything. The day her dog died, her first day of school, the time her father took her to the beach. How much of it is real? How much of it is just stories she has been told so many times that her brain turned them into lived experiences? She does not know. And the worst part is, there is no way to check. The past is gone. All that is left is what her brain claims happened, and her brain has been caught lying. The university researcher who studies childhood memory explains it simply. Your brain is not interested in accuracy. It is interested in meaning. If a story gives your life coherence, if it explains why you are the way you are, your brain will protect that story, even if it has to invent details, even if it has to steal memories from other people, even if it has to rewrite your entire childhood to make the narrative work. You are not the author of your own past. Your brain is, and your brain does not ask for your permission before it starts editing. 3 years after therapy, the woman still remembers standing in the kitchen. She knows it did not happen, but the memory does not care. It sits in her mind as vivid as ever, refusing to fade. Because memory is not about truth, it is about survival. And for 40 years, that false memory helped her survive by giving her a reason to be afraid. Now that the reason is gone, the fear remains. She is left with a feeling that has no origin, a wound that has no cause, and a childhood that may have never existed the way she remembers it. The scariest part is not that one memory was fake. It is that if one memory can be completely invented, then all of them are suspect. Every birthday, every Christmas, Every moment she thought to find her. Any of them could be a story someone else told her, a photograph she saw too many times, a scene from a movie that her brain filed in the wrong place. She has no way to know. No one does, because memory does not come with a receipt. It does not come with proof. It just comes with confidence, and confidence is not the same as truth. Now comes the third story, and this one is worse, because this time the lie was planted on purpose. A psychology lab in California runs an experiment that will change how we understand memory forever. They recruit volunteers and tell them they are studying childhood recollection. Each volunteer is given a booklet containing 4 stories from their childhood, provided by their parents. 3 of the stories are real. 1 is completely made up. The fake story is always the same. You got lost in a shopping mall when you were 5 years old. You were separated from your parents. You were scared. A kind elderly person found you and brought you back. In the first interview, most people say they do not remember the mall incident. It does not ring a bell. They remember the other 3 stories, but not that one. The researchers nod and say, "That's okay. Sometimes memories take a while to come back. Think about it for a few days and we will talk again." The volunteers go home. Over the next 2 weeks, they think about the mall. They try to remember. They picture shopping malls they went to as kids. They imagine what it would feel like to be lost. They ask their parents if they remember anything else about that day. 2 weeks later, they come back for a second interview. The researchers ask them to describe the 4 events again. This time, something has changed. About 25% of the volunteers now say they remember them all. Not vaguely, not like a story someone told them. They remember it. They describe the layout of the mall, the color of the floor tiles, the clothes they were wearing. One woman remembers the elderly person was wearing a flannel shirt. A man remembers feeling terrified that his mother had left him on purpose. Another remembers the smell of pretzels from a food court. The researchers listen and take notes. They ask follow-up questions. What did the elderly person say to you? How long were you lost? What happened when you found your parents? And the volunteers answer. They give details the researchers never provided. Their brains are filling in the story, adding sensory information, emotional context, dialogue. By the end of the interview, some of the volunteers are crying. The memory feels so real that reliving it brings back the fear they supposedly felt 20 years ago. Then the researchers tell them the truth. The mall incident never happened. We made it up. Your parents confirmed it. You were never lost. There is no elderly person. There is no flannel shirt. There are no floor tiles. Every detail you just described came from your own imagination. You built a memory out of nothing. Some of the volunteers do not believe it. They argue with the researchers. They insist the memory is real. They can see it. They can feel it. How could something that vivid be fake? The researchers show them the paperwork, the emails from their parents, the design of the study. Slowly, the volunteers realize they have been tricked. But here's the disturbing part. Even after they know the truth, some of them still feel like the memory is real. One man says, "I know you are telling me it did not happen, but I can still see that mall. I can still feel what it was like to be lost." His brain built the memory so thoroughly that knowing it is false does not erase it. It is still there, still vivid, still emotionally charged, still part of him.
The researchers explain what happened. When you try to remember something, your brain does not pull up a file. It reconstructs the event from pieces. If some of the pieces are missing, your brain fills in the gaps with guesses, with things that seem plausible, with images borrowed from other experiences. In this experiment, the suggestion of being lost triggered your brain to search for anything related. Other shopping malls, other moments of fear, other times you felt abandoned. Your brain pulled together fragments from different memories, added some imagination, and built a new scene. Then, because you were asked to remember it multiple times, your brain started treating it like a real memory. Each time you visualized them all, you strengthened the neural pathway. By the 3rd or 4th time, your brain could no longer tell the difference between something you imagined and something you experienced. This is not a rare glitch. This is how memory works. Every time you remember something, you are rebuilding it, and every time you rebuild it, you risk changing it. If someone asks you a leading question, if you see a photograph, if you watch a movie with a similar scene, your brain might borrow details from those sources and weave them into your memory. You will not notice it happening. The memory will still feel like yours. It will still feel true, but it will be contaminated, altered, sometimes completely invented. And here is the worst part. If researchers can implant a false memory in 2 weeks with nothing but a suggestion and a few follow-up questions, what has your family been doing to your memory for your entire life? Every time your mother tells a story about you as a toddler, every time your father corrects your version of an event, every time you look at old photos and someone says, "Remember how cold it was that day?" or "Remember how scared you were?" they are planting suggestions, and your brain is listening. It is taking those suggestions and turning them into memories. Memories you will swear are yours. Memories you will defend. Memories that will shape how you see yourself. You are not remembering your childhood. You are remembering a story your family has been telling you for decades, and somewhere along the way, you started believing you lived it. So what does this mean?
It means the foundation of your identity is made of sand. The earliest memories that define who you are, the moments you point to when someone asks why you are the way you are, may not have happened, or they happened differently, or they happened to someone else and your brain made you the main character. You have no way to verify them. You can ask your parents, but their memories are just as unreliable as yours. You can look at photos, but photos do not tell you what you were thinking or feeling. They just show you a moment frozen in time. Everything else is interpretation. Everything else is your brain, years later, writing a script and convincing you is the truth. The man who remembered coming home from the hospital now questions every memory he has before the age of 10. The woman who stood in the kitchen doorway does not trust anything her mother ever told her. The volunteers who remembered getting lost in the mall have started wondering what else their brains invented without permission. And all of them are asking the same question: if my memories are not real, then who am I? Because if you cannot trust your past, how do you know your present? How do you know the person you think you are is not just another story, another lie your brain told you because it sounded good? The answer is waiting in the second part of this story, but here's a hint. Your brain does not care if your memories are true. It only cares if they are useful. And sometimes the most useful memory is the one that never happened at all. You want to know why your brain does this, why it lies, why it builds memories that feel real but are not. The answer is simple and terrifying at the same time. Your brain is not designed to remember the truth. It is designed to help you survive. And sometimes survival requires rewriting history. Start with this fact. You remember almost nothing from before the age of 3. Most people remember nothing from before age 4. Some have no clear memories until they are 5 or 6 years old. This is called childhood amnesia, and it is not because nothing important happened to you. It is because the part of your brain that stores long-term episodic memories, the hippocampus, is not fully developed yet. A young child's brain is building billions of connections every day, but it is not yet capable of filing away coherent, retrievable memories the way an adult brain does. So the first few years of your life, the years that shaped your attachment style, your sense of safety, your foundational understanding of the world, are almost completely gone. What you think you remember from that time is almost always reconstruction. Stories people told you, photographs you have seen, feelings you cannot explain, but your brain gave a face and a scene to make sense of them. But it gets worse, because even after your hippocampus comes online, even after you start forming real memories around age 4 or 5, those memories are not permanent. They are not locked in place like words carved into stone. They are more like sketches drawn in wet sand. Every time you remember something, your brain has to rebuild that memory from fragments scattered across different regions. Some fragments are sensory, the smell of rain, the sound of your mother's voice. Some are emotional, fear, joy, shame. Some are contextual, a kitchen, a car, a playground. Your brain pulls all these pieces together, assembles them into a coherent scene, and presents it to your conscious mind as, this is what happened. But here's the problem. Every time your brain rebuilds a memory, it also updates it. It adds new information. It removes details that no longer fit. It borrows elements from other memories, from dreams, from things you saw on TV. And then it saves this new version over the old one. You are not remembering the original event. You are remembering the last time you remembered it. And that version is already different from the one before.
This process is called reconsolidation. It happens every single time you recall a memory. Scientists discovered this by accident while studying fear responses in rats. They found that if you trigger a fear memory and then immediately give the rat a drug that blocks protein synthesis, the fear memory disappears, not just weakened, gone. Because memory is not a static thing stored somewhere in your brain. It is a biological process that requires active maintenance. Every time you remember, your brain has to re-encode that memory using proteins, neurotransmitters, and electrical signals. If that process is interrupted, the memory does not get saved again. It is as if it never existed. Humans do not get the drug, but we get something just as powerful: suggestion. Every time someone asks you, "Are you sure that is how it happened?" or "I remember it differently," they are giving your brain new information. And your brain, in its endless quest to build a coherent story, will often incorporate that new information into the memory. You might push back at first. You might insist you are right, but the seed has been planted. The next time you remember the event, that doubt, that alternative version, is sitting there in the background. And over time, your brain might start blending the two versions together until you are no longer sure which one is real. Or worse, you confidently remember the wrong version because it has been reinforced more times than the original. This is why eyewitness testimony is so unreliable. A person sees a crime. They are interviewed by police. The officer asks, was the attacker wearing a red jacket or a blue jacket? The witness was not paying attention to the jacket, but now their brain has two options planted in it. A week later, they remember a red jacket. A month later, they are certain it was red. They testify in court. A person goes to prison. And the witness has no idea that the memory they are so confident about was shaped by a question someone asked them 5 minutes after the crime. Their brain filled in a blank with a guess, and then saved that guess as fact. The memory feels just as strong as a memory that came from direct observation, because to the brain there is no difference. Both are reconstructed from fragments. Both are stories the brain is telling. One just happens to be accurate, the other is not. But your brain does not care. It presents both with the same level of confidence. Now think about your childhood. How many times have you told the same stories? The time you fell off your bike, the day you started school, the birthday party where something funny happened. Every time you tell the story, you reinforce certain details and let others fade. Every time someone else tells their version, your brain compares the two and sometimes merges them. Every time you see an old photo, your brain uses that image to fill in visual details that were vague before. You think you are remembering your life, but you are actually remembering a highlight reel that has been edited, reshuffled, color-corrected, and overdubbed so many times that the original footage is long gone. And then there are the photographs. Before cameras, people had to rely purely on memory. If you wanted to remember your childhood, you had to hold on to whatever your brain filed away. But photographs changed everything. Now you can look at a picture of yourself at age 4, and your brain will use that image as a template. You will start to remember that day not from your actual perspective, a child looking up at the world, but from the perspective of the camera. You will remember seeing yourself in that outfit, in that pose, even though you obviously could not have seen yourself from outside your own body. The photograph has overwritten your point of view. You are remembering the photo, not the event, but it feels like a memory of the event. And after enough years, you cannot separate the two. Social media makes this worse. Every birthday, every vacation, every milestone gets photographed, edited, captioned, shared, and commented on. Your friends and family add their own memories in the comments. Remember when you tripped? Remember how cold it was? Remember the joke you made? And your brain collects all of that input, weaves it into your own recollection, and updates the memory. What you remember 5 years later is not what happened. It is a composite of what happened, what the photos show, what people said online, and what your brain invented to tie it all together. You have been crowdsourcing your past without realizing it, and the crowd is just as unreliable as you are. So where does this leave you? If memory is unreliable, if your childhood is mostly reconstruction, if the stories that define you might be borrowed, invented, or planted by someone else, then what are you? Who are you? Because identity is built on memory. You are the sum of your experiences, except your experiences are not what you think they are. They are edited versions, fan fiction written by your own brain, using pieces of truth and filling in the rest with imagination. Some people find this idea liberating. If your past is not fixed, if your memories can change, then you are not trapped by them. The traumatic moment that you thought defined you might not have happened the way you remember. The shame you carry might be based on a distorted version of events. You can question it, you can rewrite it, you can let it go. But other people find this idea horrifying, because if you cannot trust your past, you cannot trust yourself. Every decision you make is based on who you think you are, and who you think you are is based on what you remember. But what you remember is unreliable. So how do you make decisions? How do you know what you want? How do you know what you believe? If the foundation is made of sand, how do you build anything solid on top of it? The answer is you do not. You build anyway. You accept that memory is flawed, that identity is fluid, that the past is always being rewritten, and you move forward anyway, because you don't have another option. You cannot live without memory. You cannot function without a sense of self. So you take the stories your brain gives you, even knowing they might be lies, and you use them as a map. Not because the map is accurate, but because a flawed map is better than no map at all.
Here is the final, uncomfortable truth. Your brain does not lie to hurt you. It lies to protect you. It fills in gaps so you do not have to live with uncertainty. It rewrites trauma so you can survive it. It borrows happy memories from other people's lives because you need something good to hold on to. It builds a coherent narrative because humans cannot function in chaos. You need to believe your life has a story, that your experiences lead somewhere, that you are the main character in a plot that makes sense. And if that requires inventing a few scenes, borrowing a few lines from someone else's script, editing out the parts that do not fit, your brain will do it without hesitation, because meaning is more important than truth, and survival depends on meaning. So yes, your childhood memories are lies. Some of them, maybe most of them, but they are useful lies. They are the lies that made you who you are today. And the person you are today, flawed, uncertain, built on a foundation of reconstructed memories and borrowed stories, is still real, even if the past is not.